welcome to a special edition of This Is Talking Sci-Fi with Sci-Fi Sean and
just Randee.
We have decided to go all summertime on everybody and start filming an episode outside. Isn't that great?
No, I don't have a summertime body.
You don't? Neither do I. Are you still doing your exercising?
Yeah.
That's good.
I run by your house every night.
It doesn't look like you are. Why don't you say anything when you run by my house? It's late at night and
is.
we're probably sleeping.
10:30.
Yep. Oh, that's way past my bedtime.
You wouldn't believe the people out walking around your neighborhood
Really?
at that time.
Yeah. I'm sure the video camera gets them. We're outside of the This Is Talking Sci-Fi studio in the Serdinsky Stronghold in the backyard, and we have our beautiful, as I like to call it, redneck swimming pool in the background. Yes, it's a big, giant blue cauldron, but it's a lot of fun for a couple 50-something-year-olds. My wife Lori and I get in that thing and float around, and we crank up the 80s music, and we sit out here and have a really great time. So, anyway.
Keeps you wet.
Yep. So, we're coming hopefully out of this pandemic that we're in,
right?
And they're starting to open up some stores and the beaches and the parks and all that. So we decided, hey, let's get some fresh air today. So how you been making it through the pandemic, Randee?
I'm doing good. I'm working from home, so I'm very blessed there.
Yep, you are. I'm still working at my day job too, and my wife is working as well. We've been staying constant. But anyway, today's episode we're going to focus on something that I have an extreme problem with, because I'm always the negative Nelly, as a lot of people have said. And Randee loves it. We're going to be talking about the J.J. Abrams branch of the Kelvin timeline of Star Trek. Star Trek, the first reboot movie, Star Trek Into Darkness,
yep,
and
Beyond,
and Star Trek Beyond.
Yeah,
we're going to talk about those three movies, and we're going to break down. And
before we go any further, can you break down the Kelvin timeline and what it means?
You don't understand what that means?
I haven't gotten that deep into it.
So when they decided to reboot the original Star Trek movies, I was totally against it because I'm an originalist. Everyone knows that. So the Kelvin timeline is based on a starship, the starship Kelvin.
Right.
The very first Star Trek movie, when they were all together and that ship come up on what would be Nero's ship coming through the vortex.
Oh, yeah.
That was the USS Kelvin.
Right.
So they've called that the Kelvin timeline because all Star Trek people and most everyone, and if you really are into the J.J. Abrams movies, know this, it's a skewed timeline from the main timeline of Star Trek. Much like if you remember Back to the Future 2, where Doc Brown was explaining how here's the timeline, and then we get to this point, and then it skews, and then it becomes this timeline.
I got
so
you.
They're both going along. So a lot of Star Trek fans have said that that's an alternate timeline.
Okay.
And I agree with that, and that's how I wrap my head around it. But then we'll get into it as we talk about the movies and breakdown of why I think that's bullcrap. So,
Okay.
So that's the Kelvin. The Kelvin was the first ship that had the one warp nacelle, and it went up, and the Indian, I guess he was Indian or Muslim or whatever he was, captain went over and got killed by Nero.
Right.
And then Kirk's father was in charge of the ship for 15 minutes and saved thousands of or hundreds of lives.
12.
Was it, what, 12?
12 minutes, Sean.
12 minutes, whatever. Randee came to me a couple weeks ago and he goes, I want to do a podcast on the J.J. Abrams movies. I'm like, no, because I'm not watching them again. I've watched them enough. As we progress through this, I'll tell you, I don't hate on it completely. There are some great things about it. So we'll start about the first movie.
Right.
What did you like about the first reboot Star Trek movie, the Kelvin?
Okay, the first, 2009.
Correct.
Star Trek 2009. Okay.
Well, you've done your research.
My favorite line come out of that, and you've already referenced it, and that's when Captain Pike is telling Kirk after the bar fight that your dad was captain of a starship for 12 minutes, and he saved 800 lives.
Yep.
I dare you to do better.
I dare you to do better.
That's my favorite line in all movies now. So Kirk being born during the Nero fight.
Yes. Not just born during the fight, but like was running and she had the baby on the shuttlecraft while they were escaping the Nero.
So that is exciting. And to see that he is like this off the hook, rebellious teen, I love that aspect of it. And when they have the bar fight and he's being that typical, like, earthling, rebellious person.
That's when he had the bar fight with a guy he called Cupcake.
Is that what it was? He
Yeah,
called it
remember the guy
Cupcake?
Cupcake? Yeah,
I
that
think
was
so.
just like, simmer down, Cupcake.
So I love that aspect of it. Him actually showing up and giving his motorcycle away.
Right.
Okay, his hover bike, whatever. I think it was a hover bike.
Yeah,
it was a
No,
hover
it had wheels, but the wheels were not connected to an axle or anything.
Oh, okay.
Spindle
So
or whatever.
when he gets in there and he meets Leonard.
Yep, Dr.
In
McCoy.
Yep, okay. So
All right, stop there. That's one of my personal favorite parts of the first Star Trek reboot, the JJ reboot. When he meets Dr. McCoy for the first time and he sits next to him and he starts going into that whole rant about, oh, you don't want to be beamed out into space.
Right,
and all,
yes.
blow up and all these things. And then he goes, so what's your story? And he goes, I'm getting away from a divorce. All she left me with was my bones. And that's how he got the nickname Bones. They never did that in the original Star Trek, and I thought that was kind of cool.
That was
and we're going to bridge into that a little bit.
Well, part of that also
Yes.
that scene is when he walks in there and he goes at ease or whatever it
Yeah,
is
yeah.
to the guys he got in the bar fight
Yeah.
with. That shit was
Oh
hilarious.
yeah, heck yeah.
But anyways, let me get back to it. So
sorry.
to
My
me, okay, so Kirk, Spock, Leonard, and Scotty, the casting was amazing to me.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like they were great actors for the parts. How do you feel about it? I mean, like Chris Pine. Did you like Chris Pine?
He had the mannerisms down of Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
They made him kind of look like Kirk a little bit, the original
Right.
William Shatner Kirk. Dr. McCoy, what's his
Carl Urban.
Carl Urban, I thought, did a spectacular job as Dr.
Oh,
McCoy.
God, he was amazing.
Hated Quentin, what's his name?
Zachary Quinto?
I didn't like him as Spock.
Oh,
I don't,
really?
even through all the movies.
Oh,
yes,
man.
he would do some of the one-liners and the things, but Spock from the original, and this is where you get from the skewed timeline. It's
Right.
different, of course.
Yeah.
His planet's been destroyed. His mommy got killed, and all that. And original Leonard Nimoy Spock didn't have that. Okay.
Yeah.
So that reminds me, I got to bring up something about Vulcan getting blown up.
Well, what
So,
about them bringing Spock, the original Spock, into the timeline?
That's
into
where
that?
that's where I think that when they went to the skew, they should not have done that.
Oh, okay.
Because then, if you remember, in further movies we'll talk about, they showed pictures of the original crew from the movies with the. Remember that they showed the picture at the end of all of them like that. They should have just left it the skewed timeline.
I got you.
Now
got
I
you.
understand that Spock had to come back in time because they shot the red matter, blew up the sun, and it caused the time vortex. Spock got sucked into it.
Right.
Time travel screws up everything in Star Trek. And Kirk is the second worst violator of the Temporal Prime Directive. Captain Janeway holds the honor of being the person that breaks the Temporal Prime Directive.
Right.
But anyway, I wish they would have left it out or done something different.
Right.
I didn't like how, we've blown up Romulus.
Well, let me ask you something. Is Nero is he over all Romulans, or is he just a rogue?
I had the same conversation with Lori when we were watching this, because I paused it when the big ship was coming through that looks like an octopus.
Oh, I
and
love
all
it.
that.
Love it.
All right. You may not realize this, but that's not a Romulan battleship or anything.
Nah, I didn't know that.
It was no different than out in the ocean, a well drilling platform, but it flies. So
okay.
Nero was the captain of that ship. He was way out on the rim from Romulus when all this shit got blown up or whatever. So that's no different than a damn construction vehicle.
I got you.
But you were talking about a construction vehicle that's from 50 to 100 years in the future, coming back in time where people don't have the technology to block the type of weapons they have and the shielding and all. That's why they were beating the crap out of all those ships and the Enterprise.
Yeah.
So basically the ship that Nero's in charge of, he was just some common everyday worker putting on a hard hat, going to work and drilling for dilithium crystals. Remember that big long thing that came down? That was the drilling
One of the best action scenes is when they parachuted onto the drilling rig.
Which has all types of holes in it, but I digress. But yes, Nero was not in charge of the Romulan Empire. He was not in the military, because just like us on Earth in reality, there's policemen, there's garbage truck guys, there's guys that work at the DOT, there's guys that are in the military, and they're all different sects. So the military is different than, say, the scientist, and that's how Romulus is broken down.
I got you.
Okay, so Nero is just a Joe Blow guy, a average Joe doing a job, and then all of a sudden the planet Romulus blows up and his wife and little girl dead and all, yada yada yada.
Okay,
story.
so let's take Kirk. He wants to go save Pike, and Spock doesn't.
Right.
Is that something that has happened in the back when they were rubbing heads?
In the original Star Trek, it was the exact opposite.
Oh, okay.
You remember the episodes we talked about, the cage and the menagerie, where when you had the guy in the wheelchair? That's Pike, And in Discovery, season 2, you see where he flashes back, where Pike flashes.
They show some of that original Star Trek.
And then they show him freaking out and seeing himself all burnt in a wheelchair and stuff.
Yeah.
So, in the original Star Trek, Spock actually, I don't want to use the word kidnaps, but he commandeers Captain Pike in the wheelchair, and he takes him back to gosh darn it, what's the name of that species, the big-headed guy? The Thelosians. Because they have that mind control thing. Well, in JJ's world, it's the exact opposite. Spock doesn't want to go and rescue Pike. He doesn't have any loyalty to him. Kirk does, because he looks at Pike as his father.
Right.
Okay? So, that was one of the skewed timeline.
I got you.
And you got to understand, like I keep going back to Spock, which Uhura and Spock are my 2 least favorite characters in these JJ ones.
Is it because they're together and their relationship is...
Again, that in the original Star Trek, this upper timeline, that never happens.
Okay.
They don't have a relationship.
Okay.
Spock goes after Nurse Chapel, and they mention Nurse Chapel once, which I thought was kind of sad because Nurse Chapel is like one of the main characters of the original Star Trek.
So, what's her name? Uhura?
Uhura.
Mm-hmm. Was she in the original?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
Yes. She was the first black woman to have a leading role in the 1960s.
Okay.
And she actually, when they run up on an alien species in the original timeline, if you will, original Trek, I'll just call it original Trek.
Yeah.
They run on a species and they had mind control, and they made Kirk and Uhura kiss. And it was the first interracial kiss
because of the
shown
flower, right?
No, that was a different one.
Oh, that was
Yeah. But that was the first interracial kiss on television in the 60s.
I got you.
Anyway, I didn't like the whole relationship between Spock and Uhura. But if you know your original Star Trek, Spock's dad, and in the JJ ones, was married or betrothed to a human.
Yeah, and I was.
Do you know why? You know why he married Amanda?
He was supposed to research her, but fell in love with her. No, that's not. But that's what the Kelvin timeline.
Correct.
Says.
That is.
All right.
In the original Star Trek, Sarek, Spock's dad, said he was the ambassador to Earth from Vulcan.
Yeah.
So the logical choice was to marry a Earth woman, and so they bridged the gap. It's like how. In the old days of the Renaissance and the castles and the princes and the kings, the king from this country would have his son marry the princess of this country, so they would merge together. Same type of a situation.
Right. Well, one of the good things that you might probably didn't like this aspect, but when Spock is being put into, or he's been given the opportunity to be on the council on Vulcan, and they say his disabilities, and it flips his attitude.
What do you mean by disability? See, and they kind of touched on that in the original Star Trek, because he was a half-breed.
Right, absolutely, yep.
In the future, where there's no racism and all this other crap, they're hating. The Vulcans are hating on their own people.
Right.
Because in the original Star Trek, there's a skew of 2 different types of Vulcans. There are the Vulcans that went with the logic way of life,
right,
and they went the other half of that didn't follow that went to still had emotions and all that.
Right.
Spock was that fine line because. I don't want to use the word of Vulcan autism or anything, but it was like that. It's just like he was not accepted because, I'm not saying autistic children are not accepted, they are, but I'm just trying to make a point here. So that was that whole situation.
I got you. So how do you feel overall of the film?
Of the first
2009,
reboot,
yep.
I hated it. I have watched it, and I just watched it recently. And here's the really sucky part, Randy.
I love it.
No, you know what the really sucky part is? I got to buy those movies again because 2 of my discs are messed up.
Oh man,
I got the DVDs. There are some things I liked about it over time, but when I went to the movie theater, and I remember this because my wife Lori is sitting right beside me. I sat there and I'm like, all of a sudden, this, and they blow up Vulcan, the planet Vulcan.
Right.
Lori said, I stood up and said, let's get out of here. I was going to walk out on a movie. Because it wasn't my Star Trek.
Right.
It was the youth of the America of the timeline.
Right.
You know, and it had a lot of action. I know you like that and all that. And it wasn't fully, all of them are not fully action-packed, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But overall, if I was going to rate it out of movies, just movies, it's got too much lens flare when it shows the characters. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The little, and it's like all about the music, and it's about sexual situations, and much same kind of reasons I don't like Discovery for the same things. You know, we're outside of here, the airplane and all that.
You're good.
But I love it. It's a beautiful day. Look at that sky, and we're sitting here talking about God darn J.J. Abrams' Star Trek on a beautiful day. I would give it a 3.
A 3 out of 5?
Out of 10.
Out of 10?
Yes,
Really?
yes.
Oh my goodness. Well, just so you know, on the ratings, it's 94% on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's good though, isn't it?
That's very good. And it's 7.5 stars out of 10.
Wow.
On one of them others. But like you said, how often do you go rate on those websites?
Never.
Millennials do.
So
and
that's
they
why
like the movie,
it,
and it made millions of dollars.
Yes, and that's why they went and did 2 more sequels behind it, which they're working on a 4th, but they're losing money, and they can't find they can't get the right actors because none of them want to come back and do a 4th one and all that.